Okay, so now we're getting into fall, um, fall 2020, fall slash winter 2020. And at this point, COVID is still, let me not say that because I don't want to get this video banned, but the pandemic is still happening. Um, at this point, my friends from business school had like all moved back home and everything. I still had to, so the one of the big problems that I had here was I had gotten into the art school, Central San Martins, which is a good school, to do fashion design, which was my goal, one of my goals. And I was supposed to go to London to do the school, but I had also failed like two or three classes from the year before that I needed to stay in the city to do this to do these classes. So I was supposed to be in London, but I was also supposed to be in France to redo these classes. And that's where I was like, fuck. I don't know how I'm gonna do that. And the thing is, I didn't want to give up on the fashion thing because that was my goal, bro. Like from that earlier moment, I was like, okay, like this is what I want to do. And I was finally getting there. Um, so I didn't want to give it up because I didn't even think that I was going to get in. Like I didn't even think that I was going to get in. And so I got in. My family did help me put some funds together to do that. And this is what I was talking about, like the education finesse. Because so that year at Central San Martins was supposed to cost 20,000. But because of my situation and how I played it, I was able to get the cost down of the tuition to 5,000 because they had a certain, it was like the 20,000 was for international students, and I was able to make the case that I was European. Um, and that was that they had a European tuition rate which was 5,000, and this actually was the very last year that they were doing the European tuition rate. So if I didn't go that year, then I would never get that rate again if I wanted to do something like that in the future. And one of the main reasons why this was very, very important, and I'm going to make a video about this at some point as well, was because of that thing that I had learned. What was it? The two summers before that I had mentioned in the previous videos. Um, um, and basically what this was in very short terms, why I needed to do this. The luxury industry is very exclusive, right? Like fashion, all that stuff, jewelry, watches, all of that stuff is very, very exclusive of minorities. Um, and all that stuff just happens to take place in Europe, particularly in France and in other French speaking parts of Europe. So like the French speaking part in Switzerland. Um, me being from the States and having this opportunity to be able to actually go and be in it for real as a French person was something very unique that I felt like contributed to that purpose that I was talking about in previous videos. Like I wanted to maximize on all the cards that I was dealt in life. I wanted to maximize on that as much as I can. So I was like, at that point, I was like, I would be stupid to not try and take advantage of that if I can do it. So because my thinking was, okay, what do rich people like to buy? Rich people, wealthy people like to buy nice things. They like to buy things like art. They like to buy things like watches. They like to buy things like expensive clothes. They like to buy expensive cars. Um, and so this is what I was saying about how school can be used as a tool to get access to certain groups, or places, because the people who make those nice things come from schools like Central Saint Martin's. You get what I'm saying? So Central Saint Martin's and other designer schools are sort of like the authority on chic, on luxury, on designer, on all that stuff. They set the standard for that market. And so I was like, okay, I'm trying to get into that market because this is another thing. Like Bernard Arnault, he said, only in the luxury industry can you make luxury margins. And that's a very true statement, because when I started doing fashion, like the few years prior, and I was looking at the materials and everything like that, you sort of are able to attune your eye to what is real and what's not real. So because I was doing all this research on like materials and development and manufacturing and everything like that, I was able to see when I looked at luxury goods, I was like, bro, this ain't even all that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this ain't even all that. So I don't understand why the price is so crazy, but those places, they have obviously a lot of brand equity. There's a lot of sort of social class distinction, very psychological. It's more of a psychological thing than anything, is the social class distinction, which um was part of what I was learning that summer 2018. Um I'm gonna do a whole thing about it. But this move, going to the art school, was a big piece in sort of establishing credibility in that sort of luxury space, right? Because after that, you only have a certain number of companies. Like, people don't even know that all these holding companies are behind all these big luxury designer brands, like Louis Vuitton, Gucci, all these Hennessy, Cartier, like all those things belong to holding companies. Um, and so, when I was learning about that, I was like, okay, the holding companies, the art school, everything like that. I was like, okay, I need to sort of position what I'm aiming at. But so that's why it was critical that I do that I needed to do that. And so I did. I got into the school. But it was also a weird experience, because at the same time, here I am trying to cultivate things like my masculinity and um this sort of like red pill information and all that stuff. And then the art school is just very contradictory to that. You know what I'm saying? Like, art school is very obviously like liberal and very like social justice and all these things, which was very conflicting to what I was trying to do. But I still wanted to keep up on my word that I said I was going to do this. I'm going to do it and do it. Um, and I actually did enjoy it. I actually did. I feel like there is something of a value of like people, like, because I do enjoy art and creativity and all that stuff. I think there's a lot of applications beyond what people generally tend to think of as what is creative or what is art. And there is sort of channels that you can channel that in masculine ways, which maybe I'll talk about. Um, but sort of just like refining my creative process. Creativity really is a process of death and rebirth. a process of destruction and reconstruction in a lot of ways. Um, and so I think like that's a very important thing to understand is that process of deconstructing things, learning how to deconstruct things, and then reconstructing them. Because that can go from anything like thoughts, ideas, beliefs, movements, ideologies, all those things can be deconstructed, which is something like that I was going through, like identity and all that stuff. All that stuff is a process of deconstruction when you're going through like ego death and everything like that. When you're like awakening, let's say like from the Matrix, you know, all that is a process of deconstruction. Your whole reality just gets torn down. Um, and that's a difficult point because that allows for things like nihilism to set in and all these things. But learning that you can also recreate it and that it's always a cycle. It's not the end, it's just a cycle. Is somewhat of a powerful um perspective. And you can recreate things like identity, ideas, beliefs about yourself, beliefs about the world, beliefs about how you interact with the world. And so going through art school sort of made me concretely think about that, while I was still moving towards this goal and direction of sort of getting into spaces where not many people who look like me or just in general are able to get into. um so that was important, and I have a couple projects on this channel that I put up. um but yeah, so I ended up doing both at the same time. I was doing the business school and the art school at the same time. That was challenging. I was working. um but it was all right. It was all right. So this is like fall winter 2020, so I go into 2021 after.